Delta 2, this is Delta 1, over.
So what's the plan, boss?
Surprise party.
Just like the old days.
You got it. Delta 2, this is Delta 1, come in.
Chuck Norris, a name that conjures images of flying roundhouse kicks, stoic one-liners, and a Hollywood career built on raw toughness. For decades, Chuck has been an unstoppable force in action cinema and martial arts history. But behind the on-screen legend lies a man who's worked with, befriended, and at times clashed with some of the biggest names in the business. While Chuck Norris has rarely spoken out about personal grudges, the rumor mill never sleeps. In this video, we dive deep into the stories, speculation, and behind-the-scenes conflicts that suggest Chuck may not have gotten along with everyone in Tinseltown. From intense set tensions and creative disagreements to philosophical clashes and snubbed collaborations, today we are unpacking the four actors Chuck Norris may not be too fond of. Whether it's fact, fiction, or something in between, one thing's for sure: these Hollywood dynamics are full of surprises. Let's break down the legends, the egos, and the rumors that made these relationships so complicated. Chuck Norris wasn't just another Hollywood action star. He was a force of nature wrapped in discipline and grit. By the time he arrived in Tinseltown, he'd already conquered the martial arts world, holding 6 world karate championships and earning a reputation as someone who didn't just act tough. He was tough. He didn't chase fame. Fame came knocking after Bruce Lee handpicked him for a legendary showdown in Way of the Dragon. That fight alone made Chuck a household name, but it was his work ethic that kept him there. Behind the scenes, though, Chuck wasn't just throwing kicks and taking names. He was navigating a minefield of egos, demands, and power struggles. Hollywood wasn't used to someone who didn't play the politics, someone who showed up early, expected the same of others, and wouldn't tolerate diva behavior. Directors respected him, but co-stars? That was another story. Some resented how the quiet, composed martial artist commanded the spotlight without needing to shout or scheme. Whispers of conflict followed him, actors who refused to work with him again, producers who clashed over control, and stunt teams who underestimated him only once. Chuck didn't need to explode in rage. A single stare could freeze tension on set. Those who earned his respect found a loyal, generous collaborator. But those who crossed him learned quickly that behind the calm exterior was a man who never forgot a slight. Even as his fame skyrocketed, Chuck never lost the principles he built in the military and the dojo. He wasn't interested in Hollywood games. He was there to do the job, do it well, and leave with integrity intact. That unshakable code made him a legend on screen and a mystery behind it. Chuck Norris and Bruce Lee, 2 titans, 2 styles, one unforgettable showdown. In Way of the Dragon, their legendary Coliseum battle mesmerized audiences and cemented both men as martial arts icons. But behind the perfectly timed strikes and cinematic mastery was a power struggle that few dared to speak about openly. Bruce Lee, the explosive visionary, was not only the star, but also the director, a role he took seriously and personally. He choreographed the fight with artistic flair and philosophical undertones, insisting on controlling every frame. Chuck, however, came from a different school of thought: traditional karate discipline, methodical moves, and clean execution honed from years of competitive fighting. He wasn't there to freestyle. He was there to deliver. From the beginning, the energy on set was electric, and not always in a good way. Insiders recall moments where Chuck questioned the realism of certain sequences, especially Bruce's more flamboyant moves. Chuck reportedly pushed for a more grounded, authentic fight, one where both combatants showcased their true skills rather than stylized theatrics. Bruce, ever the showman, wanted drama and spectacle. Arguments simmered. They clashed over the fight's length, the choreography's pacing, and, most controversially, its outcome. Bruce insisted on his character's victory, seeing it as a metaphorical triumph of philosophy. Chuck, though respectful, didn't agree with being portrayed as simply another obstacle for Bruce to conquer. Though they maintained public respect for one another, the tension never fully disappeared. Their on-screen chemistry may have masked it, but the competitive fire between them burnt intensely. Some crew members claimed they never truly patched things up, their brief collaboration leaving more bruises behind the scenes than in front of the camera. The fight may have ended in the film, but the rivalry lived on in whispers and what-ifs. Chuck Norris and Steven Seagal, two action titans with vastly different philosophies, were never destined to get along. Their encounters off-screen didn't involve flying fists or roundhouse kicks, but what erupted between them was a cold war of ego, pride, and clashing values that pulsed beneath Hollywood's glossy surface. While Chuck exuded silent strength and lived by a code of honor rooted in his military and martial arts background, Seagal swaggered through the industry with brash confidence and eyebrow-raising stories. From claiming he'd trained CIA operatives to speaking about his aura and supposed spiritual powers, Seagal carved out a reputation that many in the martial arts world found hard to stomach, none more so than Chuck. When the two were introduced at industry events, witnesses said the air would shift. Chuck was polite but visibly unimpressed. He viewed martial arts as a disciplined path, not a Hollywood circus. Seagal's flair for self-aggrandizement, his tendency to embellish his past, and his dismissive attitude toward other fighters struck Chuck as phony and dishonorable. Several producers have since whispered that Chuck outright declined collaborations when Seagal's name came up, even in early casting talks. The tension escalated further when Chuck dropped pointed remarks in interviews about certain action stars who avoid real sparring, and people who confuse acting tough with being tough. He never said Seagal's name, but no one needed him to. Industry insiders called it a cold rivalry. No fists were thrown, but reputations were bruised. Chuck Norris didn't need to challenge Seagal in a ring. His quiet disdain spoke volumes. And in a world where inflated egos often steal the spotlight, Chuck's refusal to engage made his stance even more powerful. For fans and colleagues alike, the message was clear. There's no room for showboats in the dojo of real warriors. Chuck Norris and Jean-Claude Van Damme, two names that defined martial arts cinema for separate generations, once seemed destined to join forces in a blockbuster pairing. But instead of a dynamic duo, Hollywood got an awkward, ice-cold standoff that never thawed. Back in the late 80s, when Van Damme was rising fast with hits like Bloodsport and Kickboxer, insiders whispered that studios pitched a high-octane martial arts film starring both Van Damme and Chuck. On paper, it sounded like a dream. But behind the scenes, things fell apart almost immediately. Van Damme was given script approval, something Chuck reportedly took issue with. For a man who built his career on discipline, tradition, and realism, the idea of taking creative cues from a younger, flashier newcomer didn't sit well. Chuck walked away. Officially, it was due to creative differences, but those close to him say he doubted Van Damme's commitment to the craft. Reports of Van Damme arriving late to sets, feuding with directors, and indulging in wild behavior didn't help. Chuck saw martial arts as sacred, not a Hollywood prop for ego and excess. Van Damme, in turn, never held back behind closed doors. He allegedly mocked Chuck's clean-cut image and labeled him yesterday's hero. To Van Damme, Chuck represented an outdated ideal of martial arts, too rigid, too square, and not in tune with the cinematic flash the audience now craved. The two never exchanged barbs publicly. No headline-grabbing feuds, no trash talk on talk shows. But in Hollywood circles, their mutual disinterest in collaboration was deafening. They avoided each other at events. No photos, no crossover projects. Just a long, awkward silence between two martial arts icons, one rooted in tradition, the other in flamboyant reinvention. And for fans, it was the legendary fight that never happened. Of all Chuck Norris's behind-the-scenes clashes, the tension with David Carradine might be the most surprising and the most quietly intense. On the surface, Carradine, the iconic star of Kung Fu, should have been an ally in promoting martial arts culture. But Chuck saw things very differently. Carradine was famously cast as Kwai Chang Caine, despite having no formal martial arts training at the time, a decision that enraged traditionalists. To Chuck, who had spent years mastering multiple disciplines and earning real-world titles, Carradine's rise in the martial arts world felt like a Hollywood illusion built on misrepresentation. The fact that Carradine often portrayed himself as deeply connected to Eastern philosophies only deepened the rift. What really lit the fuse, however, was a now infamous interview where Carradine boasted he was as skilled as any martial artist in Hollywood. For Chuck, that crossed the line. It wasn't just ego, it was an insult to those who had bled, trained, and earned their reputations the hard way. At a prestigious martial arts award ceremony in the early 90s, tension reportedly reached a breaking point. The two were seated within arm's reach, but not a single word passed between them. Witnesses said the air was thick with discomfort. Chuck's stoic demeanor clashed with Carradine's free-spirited persona, and the chill between them didn't go unnoticed. Chuck never engaged in public feuds, but he let his thoughts slip in a rare comment. There's a difference between playing a martial artist and being one. Fans instantly speculated the barb was aimed directly at Carradine, and Hollywood insiders agreed. What could have been a powerful alliance between two martial arts icons instead became a case study in authenticity versus performance. And Chuck never forgot the difference. Chuck Norris's journey through Hollywood wasn't just about martial arts battles and blockbuster stardom. It was also a battleground of politics and principles. Unlike many of his peers who blended seamlessly into the industry's liberal mainstream, Chuck stood firm as a staunch conservative, and that stance often put him on a collision course with Hollywood's powerful elite. The entertainment world, known for its progressive leanings, wasn't always kind to Chuck's outspoken views. While he never let politics tarnish his on-screen action or choreography, off-camera, the ideological divide created unmistakable friction. Producers, directors, and fellow actors who embraced more liberal agendas found Chuck's unwavering beliefs hard to swallow. It wasn't just about disagreements, it was about fundamentally different worldviews. Chuck's refusal to take on roles that clashed with his personal values became legendary. He walked away from scripts that glorified gratuitous violence or pushed messages he couldn't stand behind. Where others saw opportunity and fame, Chuck saw lines he refused to cross. That uncompromising stance cost him projects, endorsements, and sometimes friendships. Insiders say his reputation for integrity both isolated and defined him. In an industry that often rewards compromise and conformity, Chuck was a rebel, unyielding and unapologetic. He wasn't interested in fame if it meant sacrificing his principles. This ideological rift also fueled some of the tensions between Chuck and other actors, whose more flexible political stances clashed with his. For Chuck, The battle wasn't just on the mat or the set. It was in the values he refused to abandon. The Hollywood politics swirling around him were more than background noise. They were a persistent force shaping the alliances he made and the enemies he gained. Behind the polished action and Texas charm of Walker, Texas Ranger lurked a set buzzing with tension and unspoken battles. Chuck Norris wasn't just the star. He was the undisputed kingpin behind the scenes, and his ironclad standards left no room for slackers or drama. What many fans didn't see was the harsh reality of what it took to keep the show running smoothly under Chuck's watchful eye. Cast and crew insiders revealed that Chuck had a ruthless zero-tolerance policy when it came to punctuality and professionalism. If you showed up late, acted disrespectfully, or failed to bring your best every day, you quickly found yourself on thin ice. One anonymous actor described Chuck as intimidating as hell, a man whose mere presence could make you rethink your career choices. The message was clear: fall out of line, and your days on the show were numbered. Rumors swirled about multiple supporting actors being quietly ousted for clashing with Chuck's no-nonsense approach. These weren't just petty disputes. They were power moves in a high-stakes environment where Chuck set the bar and didn't budge. Some called it ruthless, others called it necessary discipline. But for those who couldn't handle the pressure, the consequences were swift and unforgiving. Yet, Chuck's defenders argue he was simply demanding the same discipline and respect that had forged his own legendary career. His intensity wasn't about ego. It was about upholding a standard of excellence that the show's success depended on. Still, the reality was clear. Walker, Texas Ranger, wasn't just about kicking bad guys. It was also about navigating the fierce, sometimes brutal politics of a set run by a martial arts legend who expected nothing less than perfection. Despite the swirling rumors and Hollywood gossip, many of Chuck Norris's co-stars have shared a far more nuanced picture of the man behind the legend. Actors like Jonathan Brandis and Clarence Gilliard Jr., who worked closely with Chuck on Walker, Texas Ranger, and other projects, describe him as not only a consummate professional, but also a surprisingly generous mentor. Those who earned Chuck's respect often found a loyal ally willing to guide and support them through the grueling demands of the industry. The divide was clear. Chuck's respect was hard-earned but steadfast. If you came to set prepared, worked tirelessly, and showed genuine respect for the craft and the people around you, Chuck stood by your side like a fortress. But cross that line with laziness, ego, or unprofessional behavior, and you would feel the full force of his disapproval. Chuck didn't need to publicly call anyone out. His icy silence or a well-placed cold shoulder spoke volumes louder than any scandalous headline. Some insiders say the silent treatment was his way of maintaining control without fueling public drama, an approach that earned both admiration and fear among cast and crew. For those who valued discipline and dedication, Chuck was the gold standard. For troublemakers, he was a force to be reckoned with, a man who wouldn't hesitate to shut down disruption before it could take root. Today, Chuck Norris has stepped back from the Hollywood spotlight, but his influence remains unshaken. Now, in his 80s, he focuses on his martial arts empire, motivational programs, and charity work, still a legend in every sense. While Chuck has reportedly made peace with much of his turbulent past, those closest to him know the grudges and lessons remain etched beneath the surface. For Chuck, respect isn't just earned, it's demanded, and crossing him is a price few want to pay. The internet has become a relentless breeding ground for speculation, and when it comes to Chuck Norris, the rumors run wild. Fans across forums, Reddit threads, and countless YouTube deep dives obsessively dissect every interaction, every glance, and every word, real or imagined, to piece together a hidden story of Hollywood grudges and simmering conflicts. The myth of Chuck hates ex-actor has morphed into a digital wildfire, fueled by a fan culture hungry for drama. Some of these theories are pure fantasy, blown out of proportion by overzealous fans craving scandal. Others are based on whispers from industry insiders or subtle hints dropped in interviews, making the line between truth and rumor incredibly blurry. What fans love is the mystery, the tantalizing possibility that beneath Chuck's calm, stoic exterior lies a volcano of unspoken grudges and silent battles fought behind closed doors. Chuck's silence only adds fuel to the fire. Unlike many in Hollywood who thrive on publicity and social media feuds, Chuck rarely addresses rumors head-on. His lack of comment invites speculation, letting the legend grow in the shadows. It's a masterclass in controlling narrative without uttering a word. His decades of iconic roles and martial arts mastery speak louder than any tabloid headline ever could. This silence keeps fans hooked, constantly searching for clues in old interviews, behind-the-scenes footage, or casual remarks. The internet's insatiable appetite for drama ensures these stories live on, evolving with each retelling. Whether the feuds are real or exaggerated, the mystery surrounding Chuck Norris's relationships keeps his legacy intriguing and his myth very much alive. Chuck Norris might never sit down for a tell-all interview naming names, but the patterns are clear. When it comes to respect, work ethic, and integrity, he has no time for nonsense and no patience for arrogance. Whether it was Bruce Lee, Steven Seagal, Jean-Claude Van Damme, or David Carradine, these rumored clashes give us a glimpse into a man who took his craft and himself very seriously. If you enjoyed diving into the untold stories behind Chuck's legendary career, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more deep dives into Hollywood's biggest secrets and behind-the-scenes showdowns. Stay sharp, stay curious, and we'll see you in the next one.